Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bob Iacchino along with Mike Arnold. This is a weekend update path chat covering the FX markets for the week beginning May 7th. The French election is over. Round 2 is over. 2017 French presidential election results. Emmanuel Macron, 65.8% of the vote, with about 98% of the precincts reporting. 34.2% for Marine Le Pen. Emmanuel Macron is France's next president. That's what the polls wanted. That's what the markets wanted. That's what the VIX wanted. And the euro actually jumped. And you can see on the chart it's coming off a little bit. That's a euro chart on the screen right now, but the euro did jump after those election results came out. Again, the market didn't really expect any other results, but again, the polls were right. We have stability, at least for now, in the European Union. Economic calendar for this week, later on tonight at about 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern. Australian business confidence for April, that'll be coming out. Starting Monday, May 8th, just past midnight, Chinese trade balance. We're going to be looking at a lot of Chinese data. The Chinese trade balance is expected to come out at 35.2 billion, last of 23.9 billion yuan. That's a positive figure. China has a positive trade balance, a current account surplus, and a higher number would actually be good for the Chinese data specifically. Looking at Japan's consumer confidence index for April, which is coming out exactly at midnight. I have no estimate on that one. 1 a.m. Central Time, 2 a.m. Eastern. German factory orders year over year expected to come out at 2.1%, last was 4.6%. Then 7:15 Central Time, 8:15 Eastern. Canadian housing starts for April, expected at 220,000 homes, 253,000 last. It's 253.7 thousand. And then we've got labor market conditions index change for April in the U.S. That's 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. No estimate on that one. And then at 6:01 Central Time, 7:01 Eastern, in the UK, like-for-like sales year over year. It's about a medium level number, expected up 0.5, down 1% last. 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Japanese labor cash earnings and real cash earnings year over year for March. Labor cash earnings expected to be up 0.4. That would be unchanged. And then again, at about 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern, Australian retail sales ex-inflation. So inflation-adjusted retail sales expected to be up 0.5%. Tuesday, May 9th, 12:45 a.m. Central, 1:45 a.m. Eastern. We've got the Swiss unemployment rate for April expected to be 3.3, which would be down a tick from 3.4 last. At 1 a.m. Central, 2 a.m. Eastern, German industrial production year over year and German trade balance. Industrial production expected up 2.6 versus up 2.5 last. And the trade balance, a positive 21.5 billion euros is expected versus 19.9 billion last. 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, Canadian building permits month over month for March. No estimate on that. And then at 9 o'clock Central, 10 Eastern, U.S. wholesale inventories for March. That is a final number. It's one of 3 revisions, expected to be down 0.1, which is the exact same as the last. Would be a surprise if that changed at all. But even if it changed a little bit, it would need to change a lot to make any difference. And the wholesale inventories generally reflects on GDP, so it won't affect the market at this point for March. Q1 GDP has already been reported, so this particular number won't matter that much. 6:50 Central, 7:50 Eastern, that's PM. Bank of Japan's summary of operations for the April 26, 2017 meeting. We don't expect any surprises there. And then again, high importance of Chinese data because of the metals rout that we've seen based off of anticipated Chinese weakness in their economy. We've got China's consumer price index year over year for April and their producer price index year over year for April. Those are happening at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern Time. Consumer price index year over year expected up 1.1 versus 0.9 last, and producer price index year over year expected up 6.7% versus 7.6% last. Moving on to Wednesday, May 10th. Just before midnight Central Time, Chinese money supply and new yuan loans for April. Money supply is expected to have fallen ever so slightly, so up 17.4% versus 18.8% last. So it's supposed to be a smaller increase of money supply. That's M1. M2 year over year expected to be 10.8% versus 10.6 last. Again, that's an increase of 10.8 versus an increase of 10.6 last. New yuan loans for April supposed to be at 800 billion versus 1.02 trillion last. So a little lower. You'd like to see that number come in a little bit higher than expected. Then we've got EU ambassadors discussing Brexit mandate in Brussels. That'll be going on for most of the awfully early morning, again, right around midnight. Continuing that midnight central, 1 a.m. Eastern, Japanese leading index for March and coincidence index for March. While these are generally good numbers, it is for March. It's a preliminary. The leading index is supposed to be at 105.5 versus 104.8 last, and the coincidence index 114.7 versus 115.3 last. 6 a.m. Central Time, U.S. mortgage applications for the week of May 5th. Also, Draghi speaking to the Dutch Parliament at the same time. That's again 6 a.m. Central, 7 Eastern Time. The Draghi speech is much more important. We've got the crude oil inventories as always, 9:30 Central Time. Always important, especially with the crude oil sell-off we've seen. We got a close to 2% rally back on Friday. We'll see if the crude oil gets hit again as we go into the week. Evening, 6:01 p.m. UK house price balance expected to be up 20% versus up 22% last. 6:50 Central Time, 7:50 Eastern. The next bunch of numbers I'm about to read off. Trade balance basis yen in Japan. Bank lending, including trust year over year. Bank lending ex banks. Japanese bond buying, foreign bonds, and Japanese stock buying, foreign stocks. Look for those numbers to move the yen sort of in a group, as a consortium of numbers. One of these wouldn't affect the Japanese stock market or the bond market very much, but as a group of numbers, they actually could move the markets quite a bit. And then about 11:30 Central Time, that's 11:30 p.m., Japanese bankruptcies year over year for April. Moving on to Thursday, May 11th. Again, Euro G7 finance ministers meeting in Bari, Italy. That's day one of that meeting is Thursday. You might see some quotes coming out of there. There's no time on that, obviously. In Switzerland, 2:15 Central Time, Consumer Price Index and EU CPI harmonized both year over year for the Swiss. The Consumer Price Index year over year expected to be up 0.5 versus 0.6 last. 3:30 a.m. Central, 4:30 Eastern. UK industrial production year over year for March expected up 1.9 versus up 2.8 last. Manufacturing production for the same country at the same time year over year, the March figures expected to be up 3% versus up 3.3 last. Construction output expected to be up 2.9% versus up 5% last. Then you've got the UK visible trade balance and trade balance non-EU. These won't matter as much as we approach Brexit. But at 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, we've got the UK Bank of England rate decision. Expected unchanged on the rate, 25 basis points, 0.25%. And the asset purchase target is expected to be unchanged. You're going to want to watch to see if that actually happens. The Bank of England corporate bond target expected to remain at 10 billion sterling. And then we've got the Bank of England inflation report. That is all at 6 a.m. Most important thing, the inflation report and the asset purchase target. Then an hour later, gross domestic product estimate for the UK for April expected at 0.4 versus 0.5 last. 7:30 Central Time, 8:30 Eastern. The next three numbers, Canadian new house price index year over year for March. Initial jobless claims in the U.S. for May 6th, expected at 245,000. And continuing claims from April 29th forward, no estimate on that. Friday, May 12th, again, day two of the G7 finance ministers meeting in Bari, Italy. Again, you might see some quotes from that. Then we've got German, this is at 1 a.m. Central, 2 a.m. Eastern. German gross domestic product, quarter over quarter and year over year. And then we've got the German consumer price index year over year for April, the final. And the Eurozone industrial production. Now, the consumer price index for Germany, still at 1 a.m. Eurozone industrial production year over year, 4 a.m. So let's go over these. The gross domestic product for Germany, expected to be 1.7. That's unchanged from the last. And then the German consumer price index, 2%. That's unchanged from the last. And then the Eurozone industrial production for March, that's a year over year number. That's supposed to be 2.3% versus 1.2 last. Then you get to 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern time. You've got a bunch of U.S. numbers all at the same time. Here we go. Consumer price index month over month for April. Expected up 2%. I'm sorry, up 0.2% versus down 0.3% last. Ex-food and energy month over month is supposed to be up 0.2% versus down 0.1% last. Now the headline consumer price index year over year for April is expected to be 2.3% versus 2.4 last. And the ex-food and energy year over year, 2% versus 2%. These are both April numbers. Very important. First month of the quarter that the Fed says we should get a rebound in. So you should see a rebound in these numbers. A surprise to the upside on these wouldn't be much of a surprise. Real average weekly earnings year over year for April. Average hourly earnings year over year for April. Now this is important. Advanced retail sales for April. Expected at 0.6 versus down 0.2 last. Retail sales less autos. Expected to be up 0.5 versus flat last. And then you go about an hour and a half later, 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, you've got University of Michigan consumer sentiment for May preliminary, expected to be 97. 97 was also the last. And then business inventories for March, expected to be up 0.1 versus 0.3 last. And then at noon, the Baker Hughes rig counts. That is it on the economic calendar. We're past the French elections. We'll see if there's any further movement in the Senate on healthcare. We'll see if there's any movement on tax cuts. Supposedly, they're working frantically on that already. We will know when we know. But in the meantime, we'll talk about what we can know, which is price action. Mike, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. So you can see the markets are now open after the French election. Euro gapped up slightly to open around 110.19 to 20 area, and now is pulling back close to Friday's close. On a continued pullback of the euro US dollar, first level support is at this 109.98 level. And then if that's broken, next level of support is at the 109.80 level, and then below that 109.50. And then we have the return to the trend line and the defining point, which is still the trend line, the defining point, because we don't have a redraw yet, which is 109.47. On a rally up, next major level is 110.46 to watch for. And then if that's broken, 110.93. Over to the pound. Pound pretty much just opened slightly higher than Friday's close on a rally. 130.40 is the next level up, followed by 131.15. On a pullback, 129.65 is going to be first level support. Next level of support is going to be 129.47. And then we could come back and kiss the trend line and rising 8, which is 129.25. If that is broken, then the next key level is 129.04, so essentially the 129 level. US dollar, Japanese yen, also gap up right to the trend line. So that's the first level of resistance right around this 112.96. On a continued push higher, 113.04. Then there really isn't another level until 113.66 based off the daily time frames. On a pullback, 112.73, first level support, followed by 112.43, and then we're looking down to around the 112.17 to 112.08 level. US dollar Swiss. We can now redraw this trend line. No, it's actually not a redraw yet. I'm sorry about that. US dollar Swiss franc moving higher right now, 98.86, trading right at key resistance. Above that, next level is about 98.94, followed by 99.02 to 99.06, and then on a really strong rally, we're watching for a potential move to 99.13. On a pullback, first key support 98.69, followed by 98.57. Then if that's broken, 98.50, then nothing down until about 98.26. Aussie US dollar. Aussie US dollar pretty much opened flat from Friday on a slight rally. First level resistance is 74, really about the 74.15 level. Then if that's broken, we're looking for a return to the defining point of our trend line, which is 74.40. Then next key levels are 74.54 to 74.63, where you'll have a lot of resistance coming in. On a move down, 73.38 first level, 73.67 next level, and then 73.43 final level down to watch for. US dollar, Canadian dollar, pretty big drop on Friday. So, closing just below the trend line. Key support, this will be first level 136.41, followed by 136.24, and then nothing until we get down to the 135.87, then 135.75 area where we'll have a lot of support coming in. That's the bottom of the rotation zone and these two key levels. On a move higher, very, very minor resistance, 136.64. Next major resistance will be 136.90, then followed by a possible return to the 137.50 area. And if that's broken, you can watch for a retest of the highs at 137.93. Finally, US dollar, Mexican peso. Gap down pretty much to the flat rotation zone and 12.5% GAN level. 1890.24, moving slightly higher right now. Next key level up is going to be 1896.83 area to 1897.99. Then we're looking to the significant level and the flat 50-day exponential moving average, 1902.77, and then a possible return to the area of about 1908.68. If it turns and heads lower, 1890.24 first level minor support, followed by 1887.48. Then we have a flat 21, 1885.07, and then nothing down until about 1879.56, followed by 1876.98. That's all we have for you. Turning it back over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks you guys for watching. We will talk to you in the next weekend update. Click the subscribe button if you like what we're doing. Cheers, everyone, and thanks for watching.